Good morning, good morning, good morning. How is it going, guys? It is good to see you. I've got some good stuff for you guys today. Only have 2 windows worth of tabs this time. I'm often at 3, and yesterday I had 4. I was still able to blow through them quickly enough to keep it around 2 hours. Today I've only got 2, but we've got a lot of videos to watch in this one. So, yeah, I think 2 hours is probably still a fairly safe bet. What's up to everybody in the chat? Do me a favor and hit the like button on your way in. We're streaming on YouTube and X. So if you're watching on X, then do me a favor at Real King Pilled. Hit the retweet on the stream. Get it out to more people on the platform of our great Lord of the public square, Elon Musk. We're going to be talking about him here in a little bit. Mike Benz went on Tucker Carlson. Episode dropped yesterday, and it was an absolute banger. I need to rewatch it. A little over 2 hours, was just packed full of information, and got to close this window or I'm going to get infinite notifications, kind of like infinite immigrants, infinite immigration into my my notification space. It's not allowed. We must have restrictions. Very, very good conversation. I need to re-listen to it. I know that there's a lot of people who are skeptical of Mike Benz. They're skeptical of his background and what his motivations might be. Honestly, I don't really care about his motivations. I care about the information that he's bringing to bear. And he got Tucker riled up. I don't know if I've ever seen Tucker this spitting mad on an interview. So it was very, very good. We'll be going through that here in just a little bit. I wanted to highlight something when you guys said here. Bradley Schnitzer says, made it to the live this time. Welcome, sir. It's good to have you. And of course, at the same time, we lose Slosher. Slosher says he's at work and has to catch the replay. Well, hopefully the replay will be up. It does look like, at least thus far, yesterday's episode was, of course, demonetized, but it is up. YouTube has not hit me with the hammer yet. Of course, having a YouTube channel and talking about the sorts of things we talk about, I know that at any point randomly over the past couple of years, any video out there where we happen to say something that that they don't like has the potential for coming back to bite me. It's living on the edge constantly. Douglas Charles says, is the gay frogs meme why the Groypers are so butthurt all the time? I like that. I'm going to roll with that. Yeah, they don't... it hits a little too close to home, apparently. They are falsely claiming the frog title. All right. Well, let's see here. What do I need? A housekeeping. Hit the like button, subscribe, share the stream. Hit the notification bell if you want. It's not very reliable, apparently. Even my wife tells me sometimes, hey, I didn't get notified that you went live. And I wonder if it has something to do with the title. Like if I have certain spicy things in the title, I wonder if there's something that just deactivates the going live or the new episode notification that people get through YouTube. We do have a channel on the King Pill Discord. If you want to join the King Pill Discord, we have a channel there where and I post I ping everyone, let them know every time I'm about to go live, and we have a channel there that automatically posts anytime either King Pilled or any of the other YouTube channels that from our circles that I've added in there. It will automatically notify you every time they post a video or they go live. So it's a nice little backup for your, if you don't trust your YouTube notification bell, you can get the manual notification bell through the King Pill Discord. So if you go to kingpill.com, you can join there and get that among many other things. Additionally, I set up yesterday a buy me a coffee. I've had a number of people reach out and say they want to throw some cash our direction. So if you'd like to do that, but you don't necessarily want to sign up for the Discord, then you can just go to buy me a coffee and throw a little bit of cash there. Euthanasia says that the notification channel in the Discord says he says it works way better than YouTube. And Jay Ford says, take your glasses off, handsome, and now my wife is fighting him in the chat. You guys entertain me. Josiah says, for what it's worth, I've never not gotten a YouTube notification for the live stream. Well, that's good. Okay. I don't understand why. I don't get notifications for anything. I'm subscribed to and I have the notification bells turned on. It's just, every time I subscribe to something, I automatically turn the notification bell on, and I don't know if I've ever gotten a notification. I've checked my app to make sure I don't have notifications disabled or something. Nope. Every time. I never ever get a notification for anything that I subscribe to. And I genuinely don't know, is this because of malevolence or incompetence? Both are equally possible, I believe. Kate has never had problems getting notifications. Okay, well, I guess some of you do, some of you don't. I very much am on the side of never get notifications. So maybe I'm just a bad boy. YouTube just doesn't like me. Ian Carroll says, what about YouTube channel membership? Yes, you can also do a YouTube channel membership. $5 a month will get you access to, you become one of the King Pilled. And I'm going to do some channel member only streams here going forward. We're trying to get a certain project off the ground. And you guys will hear about that a little bit more as it comes out. But we once we get that a little more underway, then I'm going to start doing more King Pilled streams. I saw someone said that they've been following on the podcast feed, and it has stopped updating. It has not stopped updating. We haven't uploaded anything. We're not putting the ASTROLABE on the podcast feed. It's a YouTube stream only, because in large part because it's a very visually engaging stream. So the audio is not going to be super useful all the time, because we're watching things or looking at things on screen, talking about the screen share. So it's YouTube only for the time being. But what was I saying? Oh yes, I'm going to be doing some more King Pilled episodes, interviews with some different people, conversations, and those ones will probably be for channel members only at first, and those ones will post on the podcast feed. All right. Well, I'm about to get you guys riled up here. I'm going to get you real excited. This is going to take you back to your childhood, which for some of you is probably further than others. But it says this guy just fulfilled everyone's childhood dream. Oh, now I have to make sure. Okay, we still have to do this thing where we find the right tab. So many tabs. Okay, here it is. This is a good account. Positive side of X. You're gonna get lots of cheesy slop, but I think the cheesy slop is great. If you're trying to program your mind to be less black-pilled, to be less keyed into all the doom, then look for positive side of X on Twitter. It's great. Very wholesome. Like this video.
Get it, Liz! That's some serious squatting, man. Yeah, there you go. Yeah! Yeah! That is it! Push it! Go!
I can feel it.
We're doing 4 reads.
Oh, yes!
It's so scary.
Oh man. Hell yes. Yeah, I wanted him to jump too. Coward. I don't know who this guy is, but he totally sounds like I just forgot the name of the guy. He's on TikTok. He does golf tips. No! Not like that, Maruch! That's who he made me think of. Josiah says it's great for listening. Actually, I've never watched it. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting to know. Jay Ford says none of the subscriptions are unified. 30% off the top too with some of these. Yes, that's part of it. So if you are interested in minimizing the amount of money that you give to another organization, then that's a big vote for Buy Me a Coffee over YouTube. I think YouTube it's something around 30%, somewhere in that vicinity, and then and Buy Me a Coffee is 5%. So if you're choosy about such things, then I would definitely vote for Buy Me a Coffee over over YouTube. All right. Another one here. I've had this one saved up for a little while. That last one was one that Closed Minded Podcast on Twitter DM'd to me. There's a bunch of you guys, you're sending me stuff regularly, and I don't necessarily always react when I get it because I'm going through and adding stuff quickly. But you know, if you sent me one and I play it up here, there's a pretty good chance that I got it from you, or we're just tapped into the same circles. Because I notice a lot of people send me the same clips, and if I get it sent to me enough times by enough people, then sometimes that's okay. The people want it. I am a man of the people. I will respond to you guys. So do send me anything you think would be great. You could tag me in it on Twitter. You can DM it to me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. If you're in the King Pill Discord, you can send it there. That's another place where I harvest a lot of the content is from the King Pill Discord, because there's great memes and stories and schizo threads and stuff. Kind of crowdsourcing. We're able to hive mind the harvesting of content from the internet. And that's great. This is another one I've been sitting on for a little while, and I wanted to throw it in here because I rewatched it for the first time in a few months and was just laughing. So it says, the husband asked her to get an energy-saving light bulb, and she got a voice-activated one instead.
这么一小子的新闻量你都抱不住，叫你换个档，你换个么深空档呐？哦吼，还是个尖叫弦的。你不是说节约成本吗？节约成本也不能这样子节约成本呐！哦吼，你晚上搞得我不是放错醋就是放错油，切个菜把指甲都切了。哦吼，买头灯吗？都是带呀。你见过哪个厨师带着头灯炒菜的？哦吼，你以为是钓鱼吗？还带头灯？抠门的我见多了，没见过你这么抠门的。哦，赶紧叫个电工师傅过来把灯换了。啊，哦，这么一小子。
Ahoo! I have no idea if the captions are actually right, if anything about the story is actually accurate. But it's funny and it makes me laugh. So I like to give you guys stuff that'll make you laugh. I've seen some commentary on this chick, and you guys might be able to predict my take on it, but I'll play it for you first, and then as an example. This guy says, this Pimp My Tombstone video is a daily reminder for why you shouldn't have TikTok on a phone unless you don't want to retain some gray matter. I think he typoed it, but he meant don't want to retain some gray matter. Well, watch this and I'll give you my thoughts.
Let's clean a random grave. Who do you think is buried here?
Let's clean it and find out.
I have so many questions. How old is this grave?
It looks like it's been here for 500 years.
How did this grave get so dirty? Look, there's a tree growing out of it.
I love plants.
This transformation is extremely hard for me, but I believe everyone deserves a beautiful grave.
Okay, so I did some research.
A woman is buried here, and she has 2 brothers, just like me.
Real quick, notice the condition of the I don't know what we would call this necessarily. Would it be a headstone, nameplate, something like that? Notice the current condition of it.
Did some research.
A woman is buried here, and she has 2 brothers, just like me. I need to make her family proud. This is so satisfying. I wish I could live in the graveyard. Are you ready to find out who's buried here?
Now look at it. Come back here.
Wish I could live in the graveyard. Are you ready to find out who's buried?
So that's what it looks like here. Where was it? Back here. That's what it looked like before. That's what it looks like now. Obviously, she rubbed a bunch of mud on it. You could even see the rub marks in it.
Maria Lugo Texador. She died on the 19th of January, 1990.
I get to do this work because you support and follow.
All right. My take. I would not be able to listen to her. It would I can get through a video, but I wouldn't be able to spend very long on the channel before I just couldn't take it anymore. But I think it's brilliant and wholesome. I think she is brilliant. This is a fantastic way to earn a very good living doing something that is genuinely wholesome and productive. I think the fact that she's not in a bikini is actually a check mark on her side, because I'm sure she's not unaware of the fact that if she was to do all of this in a bikini, she would be wildly more successful. But I absolutely love the idea of incentivizing people cleaning up their communities. The same as the videos of the guys that go around mowing people's yards for free, like mowing and weed eating and cleaning them up and stuff. It's so satisfying to sit and watch. Kate said that in the chat. It's very satisfying to just sit there and watch this thing being cleaned. There's kind of an ASMR effect to it. It's just it feels like your brain is being scrubbed. Yeah, where the guy does free yard work for abandoned homes. Like, this is brilliant. This is a way that you can monetize doing these sorts of things, which encourages them to actually be done when otherwise they wouldn't be. Because if you were just going to pay someone to go around and clean it up, like, you basically need some wealthy patron or benefactor who's willing to put money into making that happen. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to monetize it, really. You might be able to, I don't know, secure some contract from your local government or something, but then we go down that road and things get very messy. This is great. Produce the content in such a way that makes people want to watch it, makes it go viral. I think the accent and the way of speaking, everything, I think it's probably put on. I think she's doing it for the sake, because she knows what's gonna drive engagement. She gets a bunch of people commenting on it, complaining about what she sounds like or complaining about what she looks like or whatever. Then all it does is just boost her in the algorithm. So she can probably make a really, really good income just doing this. And she can branch out into all sorts of things from there. She can have special sponsored cleaning products. She can have, like, hire herself out to go somewhere and do something where she can clean something up and incorporate advertising for that location or that area into it. This is wonderful. This is brilliant. Anybody who counter signals this is deciding to doom about things that they don't need to. Okay. More wholesome content. Average male friendship. You guys are really going to like this one.
A little bit old, that chart. That chart's a couple of months old. And if you want to really see some...
Donald, you must move your head.
Shinzo, you died, and I'd never got the chance to say goodbye.
Donald, I don't say goodbye. You need to remember your training. Move your head. I cannot explain. I must go.
Wait, Shinzo, if I never see you again, then see you later, Space Cowboy.
But you will see me again, because there's one last thing that I must do.
Months old, and if you want to really see something that's said,
Thank you, Shinzo.
I'll guard the roads, and I'll guard the skies.
Man, if that one doesn't get you just a little bit emotional, you don't have a heart. You're not human. R.I.P. to Shinzo. And reminder, have sex. Okay, my wife says to play this one. She texted me, so we're gonna do this one blind. All right, I see Trump and no, it's not Barron. Some young kid. Classic recipe for butter. Oh, that's just that weird thing that Instagram videos do, where the caption has absolutely nothing to do with the video itself. All right. Here we go.
what's your name?
Name.
Now, he's supposed to look like Donald Trump, but he's actually much too good looking. You are really handsome. Are you having a good time tonight?
Night.
Where's your daddy? And your mommy, right? Do you want to go back? Do you want to go back to them, or do you want to stay with Donald Trump?
Trump.
What's your name?
Oh, that's terrific. Well done, Mama. She sends me good stuff. I wonder if Trump did that on purpose. Like, I wonder if he was like, I'm going to end a sentence in Trump, so we get him to say Trump. Kamala could never. All right. So speaking of Trump, this is great. I thought that this was satire, and it's not. This is a completely sincere tweet thread from Brandon Friedman, co-founder of Rakuten Tea, board member at the Dallas CPOB, occasional columnist for the New York Daily News, former Obama guy, once a soldier. Listen to this. This is a short thread about how the media covers for Donald Trump, deliberately making him and his campaign look more normal and less stupid than it actually is. Today's example involves the Trump campaign's written statement about the Arlington National Cemetery incident. Okay, so first of all, I'm like, Arlington National Cemetery incident? I feel like I follow things pretty closely, and even I don't even know what this is talking about. But I do. So I have my deep undercover behind shitlib lines account where I go dip my toe into shitlib world every now and then, and there is a genuine, heartfelt, sincere belief that the media covers for Donald Trump. They actually genuinely believe this, that the media doubles as like basically campaigning for Trump. And there is a little bit of truth to what they're seeing, where it's like what they're responding to is the media shitting their pants over Trump constantly, and they're like, "Why are you talking about him? This is a craven bid for ratings." So they're accurate in that sense, but they're oblivious to how absurd it is to think that on net the media is covering for Trump. But listen to this. This is, you will not believe where this goes. Here's what happened. In the statement, campaign manager Chris LaCivita incorrectly used the word hollowed instead of hallowed. Axios of the Daily Beast rightly added spelling is correct to note the misuse of the word. This is the big scandal. He said hollowed. He said it. He didn't write it. He didn't write HOLLOWED. Hollowed and hallowed are all very similar to one another. And it's one of those words, it's one of those kind of old-timey words that most people have heard said in a British accent. Hallowed grounds. This is the scandal. The quote was, "For a despicable individual to physically prevent President Trump's team from accompanying him to this solemn event is a disgrace and does not deserve to represent the hallowed grounds of Arlington National Cemetery," LaCivita said. So they put, this was Axios of the Daily Beast, added sick to it. No big deal. It was either a typo or LaCivita doesn't know the correct word. Whatever. No, he fucking said the correct word. You're just niggling at the pronunciation. Maybe because you're genuinely retarded. The Daily Beast and Axios, like good journalistic organizations, corrected it, noted it, and moved on. Other news organizations either didn't notice the error or simply published it as it was provided, as NBC did here. So here they wrote hollowed grounds. But other news organizations caught the misuse of hollowed and corrected it on behalf of the Trump campaign without alerting readers, like CNN did here. This, of course, is journalistically bad. Or maybe they genuinely heard him say hollowed because he said hollowed. Perhaps most egregiously, as you can imagine, was the New York Times. We could see from the story's Google search return that they initially published it as hollowed, which is the way it was provided. But when you click on the New York Times story, the word has now been corrected to hallowed without a sick or any other indication that a change has been made. You'd never know the Times does copy editing for the Trump campaign. The deal here is that people who tell little lies tell big lies. Organizations that cover for fascists in small ways will cover for fascists in big ways. This is how it works. What we've seen here is media failing in its moment, choosing to give fascists a wink and a thumbs up. These people are retarded. Relatedly, Eric Doherty. I've seen some libs ignorantly wonder why conservatives celebrate polls with Harris up 1 to 2%. The below is why. Hope this helps. The Electoral College has been a thing all this time. So we've talked about the polls here and how to interpret them. This is why, if the popular vote shows if it's neutral to +2 Democrats, this is what it corresponds to: a greater than likelihood of a Trump win. So anything between, let's see, so D +2 to +3 corresponds to a 30% chance of a Trump win, according to the polls. D +1 to +2 would be 61%. D +0 to +1 is 85.5%. So all of these polls that are coming in right around here, now the reason they're exulting in this is because either they're stupid and don't understand this, or they fully understand it, but they know the average person doesn't understand this. The average person just says, "Oh, plus number. That means she win." I thought this is a very interesting illustration, and it puts it at D +0 to +1 puts it at almost 291 electoral votes for Trump. So a fairly comfortable win. If Trump is polling higher anywhere, then that corresponds to a blowout. This is a thought here that we've shared, but I thought it was pretty well put together here. The watcher on the web said, I keep seeing signs that the Leviathan is battening down the hatches to prepare in case they don't win in November. None of them are the type of flashy, obvious signal they tend to do when they're faking weakness. For instance, they appear to be in a mass rush to get illegal immigrants into permanent housing in states they have control over and are being sloppy in doing so. Now, I'm not going to hold against him the fact that he doesn't understand the Phantom Americans phenomenon. For more about the Phantom Americans phenomenon, go watch our episode from yesterday. This suggests to me that they aren't sure they will continue to have the federal money support for the temporary housing measures they've been using and want to ensure as few of them self-deport as possible when the temporary housing funds are cut. Another one of them would be some of the stuff they passed. I can't remember the exact details of it, but several weeks ago we talked about it. They passed some like continuing resolutions or whatever, basically trying to ensure that all of the Ukraine funding would be in place. They're putting up institutional blockades to prevent any incoming administration from going after their war efforts. As much as I think they're likely to attempt to steal the election, I think it's undeniable even they are unsure it will work. Same here. Their effort to ensure Ukraine funding, even if they lose office, was pretty blatant that they're not confident in holding on to power. So all of these moves that they're making, when they're projecting all of this insecurity, and they're not doing it in a really over-the-top way, they're doing it in kind of a furtive, subversive way. These are signals of weakness, signals of them not expecting to actually retain power. So Trump's tweets and truth posts have been, I really hope there's somebody out here who's cataloging all of them, because this one belongs in the Louvre. This is just immediately shoots to the top of some of his best messages he's ever sent. Republicans must pass the SAVE Act or go home and cry yourself to sleep. Non-citizen illegal migrants are getting the right to vote, being pushed by crooked Democrat politicians who are not being stopped by an equally dishonest Justice Department. Our whole voting system is under siege. Harmy and David, go to court and get this stopped now. They better be taken. They just received an order from their commander-in-chief. They'd better get to hopping. The Dems can't win on their policies. The only way they can win is to cheat. They do it at every level of government, and they do it well. That's how they get an incapacitated moron like Joe Biden elected. Get tough, RNC, Michael W., Speaker Johnson, and all state and local Republican politicians. The Justice Department is corrupt and won't do a thing to help. They have no shame. All I can say is that if I'm elected president, we will pursue election fraudsters at levels never seen before, and they will be sent to prison for long periods of time. We already know who you are. Don't do it. Zuckerbucks, be careful. Sir, yes, sir. All Patriots go. Activate. Colin Ross says Zuckerberg telling on himself also seems to be a good sign. He sees the algorithms on the back end. Yes. Yes. Many such signs. This is one of the strongest statements that he's made, incidentally. Election fraudsters at levels, we will pursue election fraudsters at levels never seen before, and they will be sent to prison for long periods of time. This is a pretty big vibe shift. From just the fact that he's speaking openly like this. Not just kind of making hints, but he's speaking openly, and this isn't the first time he said, we already know who you are. I mean, it's not that hard. It's pretty open. They told on themselves. There's been very well documented exactly how this entire phenomenon works. It's just a matter of having the political will to actually go after it. Zuckerbucks, message received. All right, plot twist. The New York Times just turned on Kamala Harris with a brutal critique.
New York Times.
All right, let's speed this one up just a wee bit and watch through Elijah Schaffer.
It appears that the honeymoon is over as New York Times turns on Kamala and publishes numerous op-eds on the weak, phony, and ignorant Democrat candidate. Why is the media suddenly turning on her? We're covering this.
Weak, phony, and ignorant. Whew. It sounds like some people are trying to grift on Trump's brand.
So much more here on Beyond the Headlines, only on Vigilant News. This segment is sponsored by Goldco, helping you protect your retirement and savings with precious metals at vnngold.com. I'm Elijah Schaffer. Let's start the show. Well, it seems that not everything is going so well in Neverland as Kamala Harris's honeymoon phase with the media is coming to a halt. But just like they turned on Joe Biden, is this because they plan on replacing her right before the election, or is there something more nefarious at play? Vigilant News reports the New York Times turns on Kamala. Let's talk about the story, originally published by the Gateway Pundit. Well, we didn't expect this on our 2024 bingo card. The old gray lady turned on Chameleon as the New York Times turned on Kamala. Well, the nation's most unpopular vice president appears to not be doing so well when it comes to the feedback. It's hard to imagine as the Times on Friday posted a hit on Kamala Harris titled, "Joy is not a strategy." Then on Monday, the New York Times published an op-ed titled, "Trump can win on character," something that must have made the leftist elites vomit in their mouths. Now, it didn't take long for the happy boost from the fantasy convention to flatline. On Monday night, former Biden Spock's Jen Psaki faced a harsh reality when Don Lemon told her that no one knows who Kamala Harris is in the swing states he visited.
Don Lemon.
Last week. Maybe that's good news, though. The more people learn about Kamala, the less likely they are to like her or to know about her.
That reminded me, Don Lemon, reminded me of, I've started listening to Megyn Kelly's podcast more lately, and she's had Tucker on a couple times recently. She's had Victor Davis Hanson. I very much enjoy her I don't know, her ambiance, her mood, her tenor. She and Tucker had a funny conversation about the whole Don Lemon thing.
The Daily Mail reported that ever since President Joe Biden dropped out of the 2024 election last month, their print presses and TV networks have put in a hard shift trying to paper over Harris's past record as the most unpopular vice president in American history. To read and listen to their florid praise is to believe that Harris is already a shoo-in for president and not an 11th hour replacement as a Democratic nominee. The reliably liberal New York Times was among the first to suddenly change tack on Friday, taking aim at what many perceived to be Harris's fatal lack of clear policy with a brutal headline that read, "Joy is not a strategy."
Now, the timing here is very interesting. That the Times, now the Times has not been completely marching in lockstep for a little while now, but Friday, right after the convention, so they were holding fire to get through the convention, and now it's open season again.
Now, it doesn't appear that people really know what Kamala Harris's track record looks like. And to explain that, individuals were asked about her, best accomplishment as vice president, considering the fact that they're voting for her. You're voting for her. You must like her. There's got to be something. Well, it appears that they don't actually know what.
What is Harris's biggest accomplishment to date as vice president?
I don't know. I don't feel comfortable doing this anymore.
She was a very good vice president.
That's an interesting question. Getting to vice president.
I have to do more research on her, honestly. I'm just glad to see a woman of color in charge for once. That's it.
I haven't followed her political career that closely.
I don't want to do that.
Ooh, exactly that, right? It's like, well, you're voting for her, so what do you support about her? Well, the problem with this is that people don't really think with their policy. They think with their emotions. And we know that with Kamala, she was a DEI hire to begin with. She got into office where she was a senator in California, attorney general. She slept her way to the top. All right, we're not supposed to talk about that. But then on the flip side, then she gets into the vice presidency because, well, Biden said that he wanted a black woman to be his vice president. And now she might get into office, not because she was even elected or voted in by her party, but that she was just placed. And they're going to rig the election. Now, listen, obviously in all of this, you got to remember, too, that they say that cash is king. But in this Kamala economy, the Kama economy, you can be sure that under Biden, what's going on, your money's losing its value. You know, they print as much money as they want, and then that causes inflation, and then our money just essentially loses its worth. That's why Americans aren't being foolish. They're trusting a company. It's called Goldco. I'm using it too. And the basic way this works is that they help you protect your money with a real investment in precious metals like gold and silver. It's pretty simple to get started today. Go to vnngold.com, vnngold.com. You'll learn about the top-rated precious metals company. They have over 6,000 five-star reviews, and they can help you today. My listeners, check this out. They told me today that we can get up to 10% instant match in bonus silver on qualified orders. So you make an investment, they're already going to match that investment. There's nothing better. Don't trust the fiat currency. Back up your retirement, your savings with a gold IRA, or transfer that into precious metals directly at vnngold.com. That's vnngold.com. Now, I know that we shouldn't be trusting Kamala Harris. Her track record is terrible. But Tulsi Gabbard went on Fox and said, look, don't be fooled by her laughing, cackling. This woman is a wicked witch. Watch.
I wanted to get your take on a couple of hot issues. One, this Mark Zuckerberg letter where he comes.
If I wanted to take on a couple of hot issues, you know what I mean? I'd be talking to Gun Mommy here.
Was out saying, listen, admitting that the Biden-Harris administration pressured them during COVID-19 to censor, and he used the word censor COVID-19 content, said the laptop was not disinformation. What do you think of that admission?
It's coming. Well, first of all, it is what many of us have known all along. And I'm glad he had the courage to come forward and speak the truth, especially right now. And this is really important, Trace, because you have Kamala Harris, who's building her whole campaign around freedom. This is her new mantra that she's repeating. She repeated in her debate, in her speech at the Democratic Convention, that she's going to be a president who champions freedom. But the fact is, as Mark Zuckerberg just exposed, it is Harris and Joe Biden who got him and Facebook to do their dirty work in censoring our right to free speech. Once again, her words do not match her actions. So we got to turn down the volume on whatever it is she's saying and just look at her record, because that tells us the whole story about why we should not allow her in the White House.
Yeah. You're not supposed to look at what she's actually done, and you don't know what she's done, but it did turn out that she actually worked with Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg said, to censor anti-vaccine information, COVID vaccine that is, and to control everything that happened during the scamdemic. Now, my name is Elijah Schaefer. You know that I trust this network, and you do too. So make sure that you sign up for our newsletter at vigilantnews.com, or you can also subscribe to our Rumble and our X accounts, real easy, at Vigilant News. The link's in the description. We thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you always tuning in. Have a great rest of the week, and may God bless the United States of America. I'm signing out.
All right. I've said before, when I share that some of these long form things from other guys that generate this stuff, if they have ads in it, then I'm gonna share it with the ad, because if I'm gonna use their content and they want to be able to monetize their content, then I don't want to stand in the way of that. Okay, so I've got another thread here from the Vigilant Fox. The RFK Jr. interview. They don't want you to see. Prepare to have your mind blown. Megyn Kelly calls him RFKJ. So, RFK Jr. went on with Dr. Phil. I haven't watched the full episode yet. It's in my queue to watch. But I appreciate these guys that come out and do these threads with the clips, because I was working on this morning. I was trying to make a thread with a bunch of clips and stuff from the Mike Benz interview, and it just takes a long time. I don't have the patience to sit around and find listen through, cut it up here. Okay, then put a quote from it and describe it on a tweet, and then cut it up another little. Fuck it. I just took the whole 8-minute video and just dropped it. And we're gonna watch it here in a minute. So I appreciate these guys that every time there's a big interview like this, they do these threads. This is a great way to summarize the content, and it's great for our little cottage industry of streamers and creators and artists, or whatever you want to call us. Commentators. This facilitates it very well. This is the modern news. This is news in the modern day. This is how it works. I love it. All right.
I had this interesting series of meetings with President Trump, in which he really surprised me by by strongly endorsing the mission for his presidency, saying that he wanted his legacy to end the chronic disease epidemic in this country. And that's been my central mission for the past 20 years, is addressing that issue. What's happening to our kids? We have the sickest children in the world. You know, when I was a kid, about 6% of American children had chronic disease. Today, it's 60%.
6% to 60%. Chronic disease in children. This is an atrocity. More than half of children in the United States have some kind of chronic disease. This is, no matter how you frame that, it's a black pill. If it's because we've redefined what chronic disease is to include some stuff that wouldn't really count as chronic disease, well, that's not a good thing, given the downstream effects of that. Or if they're genuinely diseased, and I'd say, I would say a properly inclusive or expansive definition of chronic disease is probably more than 60%. I think the number of people who are genuinely, and like compared to the standard for a human being, who are genuinely not in a state of chronic dis-ease would be much greater than 60%. The people who actually would meet that standard, they're a tiny fraction of the population.
These are in basically major categories like neurological illnesses, which is ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, autism, autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and juvenile diabetes, and then the allergic diseases like peanut allergies and food allergies and eczema. And all of these appeared in the mid-1980s. Oh, you know, I never saw anybody with any of these diseases when I was a kid.
I grew up in the 50s, and these weren't issues.
They weren't issues. You didn't know anybody who had diabetes. You certainly did not know anybody who had autism. And now
or peanut allergies.
Or peanut allergies. In fact, Congress asked the EPA, tell us what year these epidemics began. EPA scientists came back and said it's a red line, 1985. That gives us a hint about the culprits, because we know it's not a genetic.
So he said 1985, but he misspoke. It was 1989, which is very interesting.
Injury. Genes don't cause epidemics. They may provide the vulnerability, but you need an environmental exposure, an environmental toxin. And so something happened in our kids around that at that time, and it's probably a lot of different exposures. The collapse of our food system, the industrialization of our food system, et cetera.
Okay, so there's clip number one. But Kennedy didn't stop there. He made a statement so profound that you worry that it's the type of thing that people get assassinated for.
Here it's caused, we have the highest chronic disease burden of any country in the world, and it's destroying us. It's $4.3 trillion a year. It's costing our country 5 times the military budget. When my uncle was president, the medical expenditures on chronic disease were zero. Today, it's 95% of our healthcare expenditures. It's sinking our country. And we're getting sicker and sicker. We're paying twice what Europeans do for healthcare. We have the worst healthcare outcomes in the world. It's all because we're being mass poisoned by processed foods, by pesticides, by chemicals, and by pharmaceutical drugs. And there's a series of industries that actually make money by keeping us sick. And it's not just industries, but it's the med schools, the hospitals, the insurance companies you would think would want us healthy, but they actually make more money if we get sicker. And then, of course, the pharmaceutical companies. If you have a chronic disease, you're a lifetime patient. This drug, Ozempic, costs $1,500 for a week. And there's now a bill before Congress that would force the insurance companies, Medicare, to pay for it for every American who's obese. Well, that's 74% of our population.
Right.
That's going to be $3 trillion a year. And for tiny...
$3 trillion a year. If you want a lot of detail on this specific thing, particularly Ozempic, listen to the interview that Tucker Carlson did with Casey and Callie Means. They went into this in detail, and it's horrifying. This is existential civilizational crisis stuff on its own. The only way you could possibly rationalize this is just abject sociopathic greed. That's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario is a cabal of people who are openly trying to exterminate the human population.
Fraction of that, you could give every American 3 meals a day of organic food, and diabetes would disappear overnight. You know, diabetes is treatable with food, right, with exercise, and obesity is.
I do not give a flying fuck what RFK's worldview is, what other foibles he has, what particular policies regarding guns or what have you he would be willing to endorse. I do not care. The fact that he is talking about this these sorts of issues in the way that he's talking about them, and that he's getting the endorsement and support of what ought to be the incoming administration, this is a massive, massive white pill. Because these issues are, if there is not some major initiative, whether government or private or whatever, I don't care where the initiative comes from. If there isn't some sort of initiative that begins to take this sort of stuff on head on, these issues are going to spiral out of control. And the social, cultural, economic, financial consequences of it are going to be catastrophic.
We have the highest chronic disease burden.
I already played that one. Go follow the Vigilant Fox, if for nothing else, because I understand just how much work it is, to put together these threads. And they're very useful to me, so go follow him and support him.
Why do you think they're so threatened? Are we following the money here? Is that what it gets down to?
I think in terms of the television networks are very, very dependent on pharmaceutical advertising. I knew Roger Ailes very well. Roger Ailes was, of course, the founder of Fox News and the CEO of Fox News for many years. He and I were on opposite sides of the political spectrum, but we had this friendship that survived all that. He would always make sure that I could get on his platform to talk about environmental issues. So I was the only environmentalist who was going on Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly and Neil Cavuto for many, many years. And at one point, I made a film about the impacts of the relationship between mercury and this epidemic of neurological injuries, and mercury in medical products. And I showed him the film, and he said, you know, I have a family member who I think was injured by this. And he said, this is a really important film. He said, I can't allow you onto my network for this, because for the evening news division, about 70% of our revenues are coming from pharmaceutical companies. And he said to me at that time that typically there are 23 ads on a evening news segment, a show, and that 17 of those on average are pharmaceutical. He said, if any of my hosts allowed you on TV, I'd have to fire them. And if I didn't, I would hear from Rupert Murdoch within 10 minutes. Yeah. He was very clear to me about that. I've seen that evidence across the board with all of the networks. They're very, very sensitive to their advertisers. And those companies are advertising not just as a platform for selling product, but also because they can dictate content. They can make sure that, you know, who's ever on that news show is towing the line.
That's he put that perfectly. There's two elements here. One of them is just straight up capitalism, just advertising, capturing the advertising space to push the product. But the more insidious and perhaps the more useful thing is the ability to control content. And this is the vector through which the State Department and its proxies have wrangled control of the American mind over the past few decades. We're going to get some more of that from the Mike Benz clip that we go through here in just a little bit. He then dived into the perverse political landscape, arguing that the American middle class had been stripped of its power.
2 years later, a very business-friendly Supreme Court made a holding that donations are a form of free speech. They're therefore protected by the First Amendment. And this unleashed a tsunami of corporate wealth into the American political process, and it put all of these terrible trends on steroids. The total cost of a presidential campaign was about $1 billion. This year, this presidential candidate campaign will cost $15 billion. And to run for Senate in New York, it costs $300 million.
I'm going to play that one more time.
On steroids. The total cost of a presidential campaign was about $1 billion. This year, this presidential candidate campaign will cost $15 billion. And to run for Senate,
$15 billion. Now remember, I said a couple episodes ago, the purpose, maybe it wasn't on this conversation, maybe it was in another conversation, I can't remember, but I said the purpose, the presidential campaigns are like, or political campaigns in general, are probably best viewed as primarily data gathering operations that also happen to reallocate political power occasionally. Michael Bloomberg's campaign was perhaps the best example of this. He spent like $1 billion over the course of a couple of months, and then this dropped out. When I dug into it, I saw that he'd spun up a social media marketing company, which is really just an data gathering operation. Spun that up. It ran, managing his social media marketing for a few months, and then shut down, and the company folded and disappeared. It was just spun up just for that purpose, and then it was wound down. There was the address for it was like some office in some building somewhere. It was just an address on paper.
in New York, it costs $300 million. Oh, that the guy who's running today is spending his entire time calling up millionaires and billionaires because that's the only thing he has time to do. Oh, if you can't write that check, he's not going to be talking to you, and he just doesn't have time to do it because he needs to be dialing for dollars all the time. And in 2010, 100.
The integrity of this election coming up?
I do. Democrats today are very angry at anybody who questions the election integrity. He shouldn't be. In 2001, every Democrat believed the election was stolen from Al Gore, by the Bush administration. In 2004, I wrote an award-winning article for Rolling Stones talking about the theft of the 2004 election. And nobody called me unpatriotic. It's a fact. We need to be responsible civically, and everybody knows any machine can be hacked. What safeguards do we have in place to make sure and that's what we should be talking about. Instead of being angry at people for saying, elections can be hacked, let's talk about how we fix the system. We put a man on the moon. We have ATM machines on every block that never get hacked. We have, you came from Las Vegas this morning. The entire city is built on machines that can count right and never make mistakes and never give you too much money back. And so we can do it. And you need paper ballots. You need something to check the election. And that's what we should be talking about rather than did this one get hacked or did that one.
In the final minutes, Kennedy opened up to Dr. Phil about why he not only endorsed President Trump, but also decided to actively campaign for him.
We recognize from our polling is that if I stayed in the race, it would have almost certainly swung the race to Vice President Harris, who was trying to throw me off the ballot in all of the states, ironically. But I thought that would not be a good outcome for her, because I differ with her on all the issues, on the issues of war, on the issues of censorship, on the issues of chronic disease, and many, many other issues. I did not want to give the election. I didn't think it would be right to give the election to her. And our polling from the beginning showed pretty consistently that if I got out of the race, 57% of the people who were supporting me would vote for Trump. And so me staying in the race would have swung the race, very likely could have swung the race to Harris. And so just getting out of the race, I think, makes it a fair race between them. And then
you're double digits in some of these swing states.
Yeah, I am.
And if 57% of those people go to former President Trump, that's a real boost to him. That's a real boost to him.
It is. I think our decision, my decision about what to do, I think it's much more likely that President Trump will get elected.
So you do acknowledge that?
Yes.
And you have enough that you agree with him on priority-wise that you're more comfortable with that than if it went the other way, even though you've grown up
even though I grew up in the Democratic Party, and I had the same kind of orientation towards abhorrence for, I'd say, President Trump as many Democrats maybe 4 years ago, mainly because of his environmental stances, which I continue to disagree with. But my conversations with President Trump.
I just have to acknowledge again the fact that he has spent he was an environmental lawyer. He spent his entire career focused on this. Has been one of his most passionate issues. You listen to him talk when he was talking to Tucker, and he started talking about the whales. He gets emotional. He's like a little kid with his wonder about nature and saving Mother Earth, and he believes so passionately and deeply about those things. And yet he's willing to set those things aside because he recognizes the existential nature of these other issues. I don't think I've seen a greater demonstration of character on the public stage, maybe apart from taking a bullet to the ear and jumping up yelling, "Fight, fight, fight." Like, this is what character looks like.
Very amiable, and he talked about starting a unity party, about President Lincoln and his team of rivals. And I could come in and support him because of these existential issues, censorship, war, chronic disease, that I feel strongly about, he feels strongly about, and that Kamala is on the wrong side.
He said here, his comment on this was good. He said, 4 critical issues: stopping endless wars, tackling the chronic disease epidemic, securing the border, and fighting censorship. And these are all connected. These are all part of the same State Department, NATO, EU, City of London complex of industries. They're all tied together. So a unity party focused on these things is an open declaration of war with the regime. You can't put it any other way. This is building the biggest to date, biggest political movement, rallying of political support, focusing of political energy against the heart of the regime. Say what you will about what sort of regime they would constitute. Obviously, it will be compromised, it'll be undermined, it'll be subverted, it'll be attacked, it'll be derailed to various degrees. But objectively, on the ground, that's what this is. He says the incredible thing about this alliance is that Kennedy's endorsement majorly screws Democrats. He was polling well in the swing state. And if it estimated 50% of those people go to former President Trump, then it is much more likely that President Trump will get elected. And he is well aware of that. He's saying it openly, knowing that this means being completely non-personed by virtually everyone he cares about in his life. Again, two of the greatest demonstrations of character that we've seen in the American public eye for generations, probably. That alone is a white pill. We're seeing men with a spine willing to take a stand for what they believe in. These make great mimetic models for young men, as long as the doomers don't get a hold of them. All right, now we got some Alex Jones stuff here. So first of all, a quote about Alex Jones from Tucker Carlson on InfoWars.
You're going to realize, oh, he's so bad because he's telling me things I kind of suspected were true. I mean, I was doing an interview yesterday with Bobby Kennedy, really an amazing interview. And right in the middle of it, he's like, atrazine, it can change the sex of frogs. And he was on a roll, so I didn't want to interrupt him. I was like, I think Alex Jones made that point like 15 years ago and was mocked. And now it's just the science. You were described as a lunatic, like a mental patient needing like full-time care because you were such a danger to yourself and society when you said that, turning the frogs gay. And now it's just like, well, that's just the science. That's the science. It's the science, And when is someone going to call Alex Jones and be like, hey, Alex Jones, you were right about the frogs? Sorry. Well, you're going to realize, oh, he's so bad.
They're turning the frickin' frogs gay. So Raw Nationalist said, it's not just that Alex Jones was right about atrazine's effects on frogs. The more important point that get lost with the gay frogs meme and all the media furor is that endocrine disruptors are probably responsible for transgenderism in humans too. Not just negative reproductive effects and infertility, but actual transgenderism. There was a study published recently that showed for the first time that there's a direct link between transgenderism in humans and exposure to endocrine disruptors. In this particular case, the chemical is diethylstilbestrol, DES, which was given to pregnant women with a history of pregnancy complications. The study, published in the Journal of Xenobiotics, considers the effects of in utero exposure to DES on the rate of transgenderism among French boys. The results show that boys exposed to DES in utero were as much as 100 times more likely to become male to female transgender than the highest reported background rate in Europe. And since reliable figures for the number of transgender people as a percentage of the population vary widely, the actual risk increase to DES exposure could be much, much higher. So Alex Jones wasn't just right about the frogs, he was right about people too. Endocrine disruptors are destroying our health and especially the health of our children. Now I have to acknowledge this is just one study, Who knows? Maybe other studies would not verify that. We need to do many more studies. We need to study this in detail to ensure that this isn't just misinformation. This isn't misinformation driven by bigotry. We have to make sure this is actual science. Just because there's been this Alex Jones and his wild, crazy rants, he may have stumbled upon something, broken clock, right twice a day. But we really need to verify this. I think we need some more peer-reviewed studies. So I'm just presenting that information to you guys here because it's a very serious news channel. And I need you guys to use your own minds. Don't just be captured by propaganda and misinformation and disinformation. We want to empower you with all of the data, and you can make up your mind. Desperately trying to keep my channel here. Remember that one time when the CIA got caught bragging to an undercover journalist about how they set up Alex Jones with... This is very interesting, very revealing. These guys are so stupid. How do you possibly just sit down and just... Bleh, everything. This is March 22, 2024.
You can kind of put anyone in jail if you know what to do. How? Does the Bureau practice entrapment a lot? We get really close. We call it a nudge.
We call it a nudge. They talk fast, so I'm going to slow it down a bit.
A nudge. Sometimes you just gotta give them a quick little, just to see what happens. Sometimes you light the fuse and just wait for it to follow. Nothing like putting out a fake social media thing to like really get people mad. Alex Jones. Yeah, so we were after him. You are? We did what we wanted.
Which was what?
We took his money away, chopped his legs off.
Gavin O'Blennis is a contracting officer at the CIA. O'Blennis worked for the FBI in 2021 and 2022 in the San Diego office, moved on to Homeland Security where he conducted asylum interviews at the southern border, and
operations technician, collect, compile, and distribute operational information to team members that aligned interagency efforts during investigations and special operations, oversee the rollout of emergency response plans designed to quickly assess the severity of potential crises, de-escalate harmful situations, and mitigate threats that jeopardize the safety of FBI personnel and surrounding facilities, strengthen ongoing investigations by querying FBI, state, and local law enforcement databases and information systems. So, the euphemisms here are fantastic. Curate legitimate information into reports given to senior leadership for review. Assess crisis management policies, identify areas of needed improvement, and update policies to resolve identified gaps. Prepare personnel security packets that allow for approved, monitored, and regulated access to facilities by contractors and visitors. I would say that's a relatively important role. Relatively influential. And this is the guy occupying it. This is our FBI, folks.
Diego office, moved on to Homeland Security where he conducted asylum interviews at the southern border, and now works for the CIA managing multi-million-dollar contracts across government agencies and private sector vendors.
I work for, what's that one? I'm not supposed to tell people kind of job. If I say intelligence, what do you think? CIA? Yep.
Oh, you work for the CIA?
I do.
That's incredible.
I'm a contracting officer.
That's amazing.
So I deal a lot with like different agencies. We're contracting with like Director of National Intelligence to do stuff. We do Navy, Army, any of them really. I just FBI. I used to work for the FBI, so they threw the FBI at me. They're like, here, you used to work there. Oh, I'm permanent. I'm
good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, why do they call it contract?
Because I do the contracting for them. I do all the legal contracts. Fly out to vendors and evaluate them. I love the agency.
Good for you.
I like the Bureau too. The Bureau was a lot of fun. I got to do a lot of cool stuff with the Bureau. I was the guy in the back of the truck in the van.
O'Blennis spoke to an undercover Sound Investigations reporter about his work experience involving near entrapment and his employer's involvement with political commentator Alex Jones's legal battles.
As long as the Bureau is able to progress far enough to be able to put pro-lifers in jail whenever they want.
Yeah.
You think that's on the agenda?
You can kind of put anyone in jail if you know what to do.
How?
Just like nothing. You create the situation to where they have no choice but to act on their impulse. And once they act on that impulse, then we call that entrapment. It's a fine line.
Does the Bureau practice entrapment a lot?
We get really close.
Not officially?
No. We get as close as we can. We get as close as we can to it without doing it.
So they can entrap some of these pro-lifers into doing things that they don't...
Yeah. We call it a nudge.
A nudge.
A nudge. Sometimes you just gotta give them a quick little, just to see what happens, right?
And how does that happen?
You put a post out there, or you have someone fake profile say something that triggers, that we know is going to trigger them, right? Like, we already know your history. If we're to that point, we already know everything about it. So we're like, oh, this will piss them off.
Oh.
Sometimes you light the fuse and just wait for it to follow, right?
Like a railing. Like a, so when a railing happens, then sometimes the Bureau behind it?
Yeah, sometimes. Nothing like putting out a fake social media thing to like really get people mad. Oh, it's fake news. Sometimes it's not fake. It's embellished a little bit.
Who would be like a big influencer that you're after? Like a, I don't know, like a, I don't even know these names. Like a Fox News person or like a Tucker Carlson or like.
Oh, I'm sure he doesn't really know. Right. You always want the biggest and loudest. Like that. What was his name? The one that said Sandy Hook didn't happen.
Alex Jones.
Yeah. So we were after him.
You are? Are you still after him? Why?
Because he's broke. He got found guilty and had to pay like $100 million.
So why were you after him?
We're not anymore.
Just to get the money from him?
Yeah.
Was that court case used? Was that a CIA?
Sure it was.
That was an agency thing?
Well, actually it was a defamation case. So it's a civil, not government. But we were looking at all of his followers, commenting, following, like, who's that the latest, right? So
this is absolute revelation of the method here. None of this is new news, but this is absolute confirmation of how they operate and why you need to be very, very careful who you're following and engaging with on the internet. And recognize that there are people like this sadistic old bastard who are actively trying to rile you up. They're trying to subvert you. They're trying to lure you into things. And they go after the biggest and the loudest. The biggest and the loudest. I wonder who that might be a reference to.
Even though it's technically not our, well, not the agency, definitely, but the Bureau, for instance. Yeah, it's not our purview. It's a civil matter. But since they got all this access to his stuff and it's there, what can we go find?
Straight Buster. Oh, hell no. The CIA is rage baiting. Yes. Yes. This is a very good observation. If it's rage bait, if you identify it as rage bait, there's a very good chance you know exactly who it's coming from. They're trying to rile you up with rage bait.
And did you find it?
I can't tell you if we did. But, so, you know, it's just kind of like, you know, realize the opportunity that you have.
So with Alex Jones, you were watching him long before anything ended up happening?
Probably. It wasn't my office, but, I mean, we would have been well aware of what he was doing.
And the goal with him was what, just to bankrupt him?
Oh, pretty much. And we let the families do it.
And what?
We let the families do it.
Were they encouraged to do that by the Bureau? Like nudged?
We don't encourage people.
But like,
we just say there's no federal statute being broken, but you do have the option for a civil case. It's a pretty good case.
Nice.
In our opinion.
So, that makes so much sense. I have a cousin who's a lawyer. So that's a lot of these cases. They're kind of encouraged by the FBI.
Yeah, like there's nothing federal law we can do, but civilly, we just go at them that way. Child's legs off.
And they did. Yeah. So the FBI was happy.
We didn't care. We were like, oh.
Basically, the citizens did your job.
Yeah.
Wow, so you can encourage a civil lawsuit.
Not encourage. Educate.
What can you do with people like Alex Jones now? Because he's still out there. Yeah. He's still chirping.
He can chirp.
Are you still watching him?
Yeah.
Why?
He did what we wanted.
Which was what?
Took his money away. We shut him up for a while. You're never going to shut him up permanently.
Unless you put him in prison.
But again, he didn't do anything to go to prison. Being ignorant is not a crime, though.
It is. I mean, what? You could bring a nudge.
He did incite a riot, like Cheeto. He didn't encourage people to go shoot people. He didn't do anything.
Additionally, O'Bleness states that he knows and works with FBI agents who were undercover in the January 6th Capitol riot, estimating about 20 field agents were there undercover. While O'Bleness notes that they were not involved in violence, this appears to be the first admission of undercover FBI agents in attendance.
I thought you said that there were FBI agents in the crowd at J6.
There always are when there's a big protest in D.C. Just in case it gets out of hand like that. But there wasn't enough to turn that tide. I mean, I'm talking maybe have it 20. You needed 1,000 to get rid of that crowd.
So they had like, that was just 20?
Yeah, just go through there and see what they can hear, you know, that kind of thing.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. They need 1,000 at least.
Wow. And that's also Capitol Police jurisdiction. They're in charge.
So
why they didn't have more on hand, I don't know.
The Bureau didn't really want people knowing that they were in the crowd. Mm-hmm. That would be overstepping their bounds.
A little bit.
Do people know that?
Why?
Do people know that the Bureau was in the crowd?
Nope, and probably never will.
You know agents that were there? Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah. The agency knew.
Note that. There were FBI agents present who work for the agency now. It is, as you guys pointed out here in the chat, I don't know if I could say some of those words on out loud here, but isn't it fascinating that so many of these little behind-the-scenes investigative journalist undercover videos, the guys that sing the loudest are the gay dudes. They have integrated their own subversion. What they see as their greatest strength has become their greatest weakness. There's a very delicious justice in that. Okay, got a couple more here about the competency crisis, about nicotine. Then we're going to do the Mike Benz on Tucker, and I got a few more things after that. So, ADHD and nicotine addiction. Again, I just got to show it off here. Do my advertisement. This stream is supported by nicotine.
ADHD in adulthood predisposes to nicotine addiction.
You don't say. Predisposed to nicotine addiction. ADHD. It's
because nicotine medicates ADHD. It lets us focus for longer than 4 seconds. And I'm not talking about the hyperfocus where we find random hobbies to get super invested in for anywhere from 72 hours to like 2 weeks. We'll spend hundreds of dollars. We become experts in it overnight. We'll go down these rabbit holes. It's like any small thing. It's like a universe exists within it, and we want to understand that universe. We want to know.
I've never heard my mind explained so well. Every little small thing has a universe within it, and we want to understand it. We want to understand that universe. Every last little nook and cranny of it.
Know the backstory. We want to know what makes it tick, what's going on in there. Nicotine kind of slows all that down, helps us out. It's the only way that our brains can function normally. If I don't have nicotine, my brain feel itchy, scratchy. It yucks my yum. It is not yummy for me. I do hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you found it informative, informational, because I found it for you.
It yucks my yum, you guys. I don't want anything to yuck my yum. You know what else yucks my yum? A competency crisis. This is an interesting admission here. Shout out to Whiskey Priors on Twitter. Ladies and gentlemen, we are nearing the headwaters of the larger competency crisis. Rob Henderson, quoting from the book here, was The Social Paradox, Autonomy, Connection, and Why We Need Both to Find Happiness by William von Hippel. This is what it says. The mutual support provided by children, but not chimps, to their fellow team members brings us to the final element that determines whether groups succeed. Feeling comfortable enough to offer up your own ideas while remaining engaged in what your teammates have to say. When Google sifted through all the data they'd gathered on team performance among their employees, they found that the single best predictor of effectiveness was this feeling of psychological safety among team members. Teams whose members felt comfortable saying whatever was on their mind were far more effective than teams whose members worried about how they might be evaluated if they didn't agree with each other or with their boss. This is a very clear proxy for male versus female, by the way. But let's say once you introduce atrazine into the equation, then that proxy breaks down a little bit. It was only these psychologically safe teams that fully exploited the group mind, cooperating with each other to create something far superior to any individual accomplishment. This result, based on hundreds of teams engaging in thousands of tasks, shows that groups really shine when their members feel secure in their connections. Very interesting. Again, they import and integrate the seeds of their own destruction. Josh Ham, that's a lot of words to say dudes rock. All right, so now we come to the main event. This conversation between Mike Benz and Tucker Carlson. You must go watch it. You're okay, as long as you've listened to Pete and Jason and I on the 2-Bit podcast talking about Teal on Rogan, and as long as you've gone and listened to my conversation that just dropped with Buck Johnson. If you haven't done those, go watch those as soon as this stream is over. Otherwise, the next assignment for you is go watch the Casey and Callie Means interview on Tucker Carlson, and then watch Mike Benz on Tucker Carlson. Both of these just dropped within the last... This one, Mike Benz, was yesterday, and the Casey and Callie Means one was about 2 weeks ago. So I got some quotes from this here. I'm just going to play it because these are quotes taken directly from the video itself. But the entire 2+ hours is riveting, but the most important part of the entire interview is this segment on Elon Musk, the National Endowment for Democracy, and how various State Department-sponsored, quote, NGOs, I think calling them NGOs is doing a disservice here. Non-governmental organizations, bullshit. It is the government. If anything, the Trump campaign is about actually using the government to take over and disrupt and shut down the actual government, which is distributed out among these so-called NGOs. This is how they coordinate with multinational corporations to target, bankrupt, and bludgeon regime dissidents into oblivion as a matter of formal policy. Speed this up a bit. And here we go. Actually, I should probably not full screen this just because this is on YouTube.
Commercial. So it's not just that like we have a rogue State Department.
We have a revolving door between big government and big corporations, and the idea of putting America first, in a world where those corporations are primarily multinational, means that nationalism.
I just remembered that I actually have this already on 1.5. I recorded it on 1.5, so I won't speed it up.
So again, you have this relationship between the commercial. So it's not just that like we have a rogue State Department. We have a revolving door between big government and big corporations, and the idea of putting America first, in a world where those corporations are primarily multinational, means that nationalism is a threat to multinational corporate interests.
Nationalism is a threat to multinational corporate interests. This is cutting right at the heart of what's motivating the opposition to all these different nationalist movements, and also why these nationalist movements, regardless of what you think about nationalism, these nationalist movements, by their very existence, are a repudiation of and an attempt to fight back against the actual regime, or the blob, as he calls it.
And so multinational corporate interests will sponsor the State Department activity and use the battering ram of the CIA, the State Department, the Pentagon, and NATO to achieve those corporate interests.
That is the regime. Focusing in on the CIA or the State Department means you're not actually, if you think that the CIA is like a single entity that wields power on its own, you're missing, you've lost the plot. They detail earlier in this about the educational system and how they essentially took the CIA, what was once the CIA, and just seeded it into the education system. So then you have all these NGOs, multinational corporations, think tanks, nonprofits that are all populated by people who have been trained effectively as CIA agents to do what the CIA would do without being the CIA. So this is where the distinction between public and private is irrelevant. Libertarians are retarded. It's a private company. The power is in the government. They've explicitly exported their power into the so-called private sector to route around that. What's very interesting here is that a thread that I picked up on, you'll gather a little bit through this clip, but you really have to get the whole interview to see this. The very notion of democracy, of voting, of having politicians and having to control them. This is like the weak point in their scheme. This is the big weakness that is constantly threatening to subvert and disrupt what they're doing. So then in a kind of ironic twist of fate here, if you have an anti-democratic political worldview, the best way to do battle with your enemies who are seeking to impose democracy on you is through democracy. Because that's their weak point. That's where they have to focus all of their resources, because they have to go and control all of these things. This is why we're trending to a world where there is no more democracy. They would very gladly export all of this to the institutions, away from the people and into the institutions. That's their attempt. I think it's inevitable. Ironically, the libertarians can never grasp this, but we're inevitably trending away from that system, because all of the powers that be will not, they can't sustain it. They can't maintain their institutional power in a world where there is actually democracy.
So we have a much bigger problem here, which is why I call for reform, because our whole financial ecosystem is actually bent on this.
And that's just the nature of globalization. I mean, that was always going to happen if you thought it through. I mean, why would Brexit be seen as a threat to U.S. interests? I mean, that's right. Okay, we could go on for hours, but I want to end, and we could actually do hours on this specific topic. I want to end on the question of Elon, who I think is one of the most significant figures in modern history. Obviously, he is, but very much a current player. A lot depends on what he's doing now on the question of speech with X. And of course, he has an incredibly complex life where he's tied into all kinds of different things with all kinds of different companies that rely on government contracts, et cetera, but he's holding the line in demonstrable ways. Everyone I know who watched the Durov arrest this weekend, first thought, oh man, who's next? Do you think that the blob you so vividly describe can tolerate Elon Musk allowing the world's population to say what it thinks through the election and beyond? And what implications does this arrest have for him?
Well, it's a complicated issue because Elon is very unique. I wrote about this when he announced the acquisition before it even closed. I wrote an article where I described how Elon is actually quite unique in this relative to other billionaire owners of social media companies who folded to pressure. And I cited a few reasons. One is, again, the strategy on this, apart from prosecutions, is whole of society contortion of the economics. So what you do is to get
whole of society contortion of the economics. Now, whole of society, this is a phrase he uses over and over again. A whole of society approach is a guiding principle that involves the public, private, and civil sectors working together to find solutions to complex problems. It's great euphemism here. The approach can help build effective partnerships and cooperation, and it can include both formal and informal institutions. The whole of society approach has been used in a variety of contexts, including the Global Compact on Refugees. This approach aims to ensure that refugees and vulnerable host communities have access to assistance and protection. It also aims to build resilience to the burden of displacement. The Global Compact for Migration. This approach involves migrants and host community members in the implementation, follow-up, and review of the GCM. It requires government actors to create environments that are inclusive, safe, and sustainable. Managing complex risk and creating healthy, sustainable, and resilient cities. This approach emphasizes practical examples and useful tools. The energy transition. This approach is used as a wider framework for the energy transition. So this is the blob. This is the regime. This is how they operate through these whole of society initiatives. A whole of society approach asserts that as these actors interact with public officials and play a critical role in setting the public agenda and influencing public decisions, they also have a responsibility to promote public integrity. At the most basic level, individuals' choices have an impact. This is how they are. This is just such clear, direct inversion. Individuals' choices have an impact. Therefore, you have no choice but to impact things the way we want them to. Your responsibility is to forsake your individual choice, give it to us, and do what we ask you to do. Back to the clip.
Facebook to do what you want. You offer carrots and you threaten sticks. So if you do what we want, you'll get bribed, you'll get rewarded. If you don't do what we want, we'll bankrupt you. And so they fastidiously organize the whole of society so that pressure is applied from the private sector, so advertiser boycotts. USAID has a formal disinformation program focused on getting advertisers to cut off revenue to misinformation sites and purveyors of misinformation. And I have seen, they had this formally published. And in fact, my organization, Foundation for Freedom Online, even published the formal disinformation primer in February 2021, 1 month after Biden took office, where in a 97-page USAID disinformation program memo, 31 times they mentioned the word advertisers as being necessary to kill the revenue to any social media site or any social media account or any independent web page that spreads misinformation.
Interesting about the USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, is it was founded by JFK. And it's one of these organizations that RFK feels very strongly about because he has a personal familial connection to it. And he wants to see it restored to its ostensible mandate. Which, if you can kind of dig down through the implications there, having RFK on and giving him authority and oversight into these sorts of things is a direct existential crisis to their networks, to the established infrastructure that they have. Of course, they can always. The nature of this is that it's not bound to any specific institution. Every single institution is a tool to be used or not used. So if you take one, then they sprout up another one. It's the people themselves and the ideology that they embody that is really the only vector for containment and what can I say? Winding them down, let's say.
So USAID is contorting the economics of the entire news industry in order to get platforms to censor lest they go economically bankrupt. And remember,
and that is their, regardless of what their ostensible mandate is, that's their purpose for existing. This is the consequence of decades of social engineering to create this environment, which incidentally, advertisers being their key vector means that the person to figure out how to create a massive social media network with the free exchange of information that is not dependent upon advertisers, yet is still able to maintain its market share, they will break the back of this current blob. Now, being a blob, it doesn't really have a back, so it makes it kind of hard to break its back. It's more like you have to like step on it. When you step on it, it just kind of sprays out in every different direction, and then it's like venom. It just merges back together again.
Remember, the U.S. This is the major threat to Elon still to this day, but particularly these advertiser boycotts, which crushed the ability. This is why they had to turn to subscriptions and they had to make this $8 a month, $12 a month type thing because of all the ad boycotts. And again, USAID is a formal program to coordinate that in a whole society fashion. Getting back to Elon's uniqueness. So for a couple of things,
interesting to consider then, the move to subscription based on the platform to monetize the platform through subscriptions and not strictly through ads became a major source of what appeared to be grassroots pushback. Oh, I have to pay to be on this platform for a long time. Having the blue check. This is where the blue check really, taking away and reappropriating the blue check, broke the back of the narrative containment mechanism for the regime. And that's why there was such an outcry against it from all the minions of the regime. Oh, you pay for this platform. They don't want you to pay for the platform because they want the platform to be paid for by advertisers, because advertisers are the thing that they use to hold you by the balls. So by paying for Twitter, by subscribing to it, putting your money where your mouth is, you are doing more than just about anything else that you could do to actually maintain this domain of free speech, where these sorts of things are allowed to persist and break the mind control mechanisms.
As a triple-digit billionaire, he may be more insulated from these kinds of whole society encirclement economic pressure tactics that someone like Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey had tolerance for. They were only double-digit billionaires, or Zuckerberg. Whereas as a triple-digit billionaire, that actually may be robust enough to resist that. Getting back to this Mark Zuckerberg letter, in 2019, Mark Zuckerberg was making public speeches saying that he thought censorship had gone too far on Facebook. That was 2019.
I remember.
But then he got hit with a very interesting boycott that was called #ChangeTheTerms, and it basically was economically coercing Facebook to change the terms of its terms of service, effectively to ban Trump supporters and Brexit supporters and anyone in Europe who's supporting a right-wing populist party there. And Facebook lost $60 billion in market cap in 48 hours under this boycott. And so Facebook folded like a lawn chair and gave them everything they asked for because $60 billion was enough to break Zuckerberg's back. At the same time, there's
who paid for Change the Terms?
Oh, that's how many hours do you have?
How about 60 seconds? Just bottom line it for us.
I mean, nominally, it was the ADL and Color of Change under this kind of hate speech idea, but it was joined by dozens of USAID-funded, U.S. State Department-funded NGOs, civil society institutions who were all creating the base of that. So nominally, you had these, ADL Color of Change, and it's about hate speech on social media, but the buffering substructure for it were all these U.S. government intermediaries. And you have this issue where what they said was hate speech, but they, as part of the Change the Terms campaign, anyone who criticized open borders was considered to be doing, hate speech against Hispanics because of, the disproportionate impact on that. Anybody in, Germany or France or anyone who, opposed, anyone who was a part of this
Phantom Americans,
pro-right-wing populist, NATO skeptical faction. Again, this whole Brexit, Spexit, Illexit domino, that all started because of the migrant crisis after we assassinated Gaddafi, and there was a giant, influx of migrants, into European countries, and this gave rise to a right-wing populist
Phantom Americans and Phantom Europeans, as the case may be. They're fucking with the ledgers.
Political opposition force, and they were the ones who were challenging all the NATO preferred political candidates in those regions, and so this was a proxy attack on all of the political enemies of the blob. But Elon is unique because the U.S. State Department needs Elon, or at least they need Elon's properties. You have a Pavel problem here, which is that they don't care about Pavel. They care about Telegram. But to break into Telegram, to get access to the back end, to be able to censor, the sort of front facing
and spy,
right? You need control of the personnel because the policies of the platforms are personnel is policy. With Elon, I don't think they want to take him out. What they want is corporate regime change or him to play ball. And I think they allowed the acquisition because they assumed that he would play ball, as everybody else who opposed them in the past did. Jack Dorsey came out and said that it was a business decision, why they censored Trump, and that he was squeamish about it, but they were under the gun of the financial pressure. That was the reason Mark Zuckerberg did all the censorship.
Dorsey, I can say with some authority, I think really hated censoring Trump, not because he loves Trump, because I think Dorsey really was opposed to censorship, like on a philosophical level.
Right. So I think they thought, Elon's talking a big game now, but they all did, and everyone folded, and he'll be just like the rest of them because he has a wide surface of attack, as well. Elon has Tesla. Elon has SpaceX. These are critical companies for U.S. statecraft. So, the U.S. Pentagon, Intelligence Services, State Department is is hugely dependent on SpaceX for all low Earth satellites, for all telecommunications. I was at the State Department.
Rescuing stranded astronauts.
Yes.
This understanding all of this should really put into clear view the significance of them giving in to Elon having to rescue the stranded astronauts. That's why I half jokingly said yesterday, like, for the first time, I actually am questioning the space is fake premise, because I think they would rather people believe space is they would rather people believe space is fake and go and run on that than have to bend the knee to Elon. Let him bail them out of their massive humiliation. This also frames what's happening in Brazil with this rogue judge in Brazil. You can tell what institutions are behind him. Just looking at him, I would imagine he's probably an enthusiastic participant, but like whether or not he would ideologically be inclined to participate is really irrelevant. Because if he wasn't, they'd figure out a way to make it happen. And it would all be through these State Department projected fronts, civil society organizations and NGOs that are about sustainability and human rights and democracy and all these sorts of things. These are the worst people on the planet. The worst category of human being that has ever existed. Because they use these things that are ostensibly good, ostensibly noble. Things that that could be great initiatives if taken upon by good, honest people. And they use them as leverage to accomplish the greatest atrocities. The most two-faced, hypocritical, subhuman degenerates that have ever walked the planet. Because then it doubles as not only does it take these ostensibly good things and turn them into vectors for subversion and degeneracy, but it also crowds out the space for people who actually want to do those good things. Which is what ultimately pushes someone like RFK into opposition to all these different institutions that ostensibly stand for the things that he cares about the most.
Yes, yep. And Tesla is hugely important to have a U.S. national champion in the green energy revolution. The renewable battery technology is, a huge part of the U.S. leadership in the climate change transition. One of the reasons that they viewed him as a huge hero up until he became a free speech advocate. And so, I mean, I don't think I can say it any better than one of the writers from the National Endowment for Democracy, the very CIA cutout that we've talked about, dozens of times now in this dialogue, which is that one of the writers from the National Endowment for Democracy wrote just a few months ago that Elon Musk is a greater national security threat to the United States than Russia. This is a few months ago, this is post-outbreak of the war. This is in 2024. And that Elon is...
I mean, hey, he's being honest.
Is a greater threat to the United States and U.S. national security than Russia, because his proximal impact on U.S. politics and in allowing opposition political movements to rise will cause changes in U.S. government that are more likely to make us lose the war on Russia than Russia itself. It's the same thing NATO said in 2017. He said, though, we're in a pickle because the U.S. government is so dependent on Elon's properties. And so basically called for a kind of death by 1,000 paper cuts type strategy. And this is what we're seeing.
They wrote this in public?
Yes. You can look it up. This is this is national. I believe the author of it was a man named Dean Jackson. Current or former National Endowment for Democracy fellow. He's a part of this whole censorship industry apparatus that I've talked about that that is done through the whole Society Network. And I can actually post the article on my X account if folks are interested right after this. But yes, arguing that again, but the National Endowment for Democracy gets its funding by the U.S. government. It is not only it is accountable to Congress.
But imagine a more anti-American belief than American citizens shouldn't be allowed to talk. American citizens shouldn't be allowed to vote, or their vote shouldn't be allowed to count. The American citizens shouldn't be allowed to choose their own leaders. I mean, imagine thinking something like that and imagining that you're an American.
Right. But understand, as soon as you accept the frame that democracy is about the institutions.
I know, but wake the fuck up, these people. I mean, come on. I mean, like, I get it. I understand. I used to drink too much. I'm very familiar with, ways that we justify unjustifiable behavior to ourselves. But on some level, like, you're ever standing in the shower thinking, wait, in the name of democracy, I'm preventing my fellow Americans from giving their opinions out loud, or I don't think their vote should count? Like, they have no souls, obviously. Right. I'm sorry to get upset. No. It's just like so crazy.
The reason that I keep coming back to that is because I'm trying to arm everybody watching this with the language necessary to fight it.
Well, and you're spinning me into a frenzy, as you always do. I'm sorry. So let me just ask one last question.
I hope that tease was enough for you guys to go watch the entire thing or listen to the entire thing, because there's so much more that I could draw out of it. There's one other point that I wanted to make, and I didn't have time to clip this up. I'm going to do it after they finish the show here. But they talked about how people talk about foreign policy versus domestic policy, and there's no such thing as domestic policy. It's all foreign policy. And I think this is a really profound observation, because what follows from this, if there's no such thing as domestic policy, what follows from this is that there is no such thing as a U.S. government. It's all foreign policy because we are occupied by foreign powers. The power structure is not an American power structure, even if it has Americans in it, even if it's companies that or organizations that were founded in America that have been funded by the American government. The actual institutions of the American government are not serving the role of American government. They're serving the role of American occupation and American tax harvesting, American labor harvesting. But there is no American government actually there. This has been the explicit purpose. So the CIA has all of its regime change operations that go out into other countries and ensure that the institutions that govern those countries are not representative of or responsive to the people of those countries. This was the industry that was developed and spun up until eventually it was turned around to the homeland. And our government was taken away from us. We have no government. It's all foreign policy, funneled through multinational corporations and so-called NGOs that use the institutions of the American government as occupied proxies, where their explicit purpose is to prevent the government from functioning as a government and to prevent the people ostensibly under that government from having a say in what that government does or expecting it to act like a government. The purpose of these institutions is to prevent the emergence of governments from the ground up. This is their sole purpose, because the emergence of a government will threaten the business model. It's an explicitly anti-government initiative that spans the globe. So the proper posture of any sort of nationalist, reactionary, right-wing, whatever sort of frame you want to put on it, the proper posture is actually the reinstitution of government, the establishment of government, formally taking the institutions that have been held hostage by these evil, demonic, corrupt actors, kicking them out on their ass, locking them up for the rest of their lives, and actually using these institutions for the people, not against the people. Speaking of someone who has been doing this, here's your Time magazine front cover. It's very interesting the way that they framed this. First of all, it's a pretty bad Photoshop. How El Salvador President Nayib Bukele became the world's most popular authoritarian, the strong man. Honestly, this is pretty good advertising. It's interesting to me, they put him in a black suit to make him look Bond villain-esque. But the overall presentation here is actually is kind of bright and warm. It's not dark. And I wonder how much of this is because of the dark MAGA aesthetic. The proliferation of the dark MAGA aesthetic online might actually be something that prevents them from being able to use that as propaganda. Because then it just looks like they're memeing right along with the rest of us. Crypto says, let's talk about this. Bukele sparks a lot of strong feelings. The left wants you to see Bukele as an authoritarian dictator taking people's, quote, democratic freedoms away. The right sees him as liberating his people from failed leftist policies. It's neither. Bukele sidestepped ordinary processes, arrested gang members en masse, stifled political opposition, and imposed order on society. There is no denying his successes. El Salvador is safer and more prosperous. He is engaging in great public works, lots to admire. But it must be understood that fundamentally, Bukele is not a conservative or a traditionalist. The Bukele example is a good way for us to grapple with the reality that left wing and right wing are two sides of the modern liberal technocratic system. At its core, the modern technological society is fundamentally progressive in nature. Its primary goal is to perfect society through the application of science and reason as applied through the laws, institutions, and policies of society to gradually fix all of its problems. Many of our political debates are not over whether or not we should be using the mechanisms of government administrative systems to perfect society, but rather what does it mean to perfect society? The liberal understanding of progress is the equality of all. The right-wing version of progress revolves around the attainment of societal excellence, the meritocracy. These are crude oversimplifications, but essentially they capture the essence of the nature of the problem. You could say that the liberal understanding of progress is laterally expansive, and the right-wing version of progress is vertically expansive. Even everyone's favorite villain, the mid-century German mustache man, was essentially a progressive. He used the tools of technique, machine, and propaganda to impose a particular progressive vision, that of the greatness of the Volk, their 1,000-year reign. It was a glorious future they had in mind and was just as utopian and technological as the left. They had an ideological vision and imposed it upon society. The left has the advantage that its vision of progressivism at the moment has a broad mimetic consensus. So even though its vision is every bit as imposed as Bukele's, it has the advantage that it can rely on the use of soft power, mostly that of propaganda, to enact its vision. The left progressive utopians leverage the power of ideological agreement and material rewards. The right's vision of the progressive utopia, because it is currently out of favor, presently it must be imposed by the use of hard power. That is basically what Bukele is currently doing. So what is true conservatism? Well, it is the Shire. It is a rejection of the idea that utopia can be imposed upon society through social engineering, whether from the left or the right. There are reasons for this, but mostly it is due to the world being tainted by sin. No technical system can escape the taint of sin. That means all social plans, even those of Bukele, are tainted and come with some goods and some ills or evils. The Christian understanding recognizes that society cannot be perfected, especially through technique. This is the perfect summation of this. This is the necessary understanding. The Christian understanding recognizes that society cannot be perfected, especially through technique. Therefore, the perfection of society is not the goal or responsibility of a Christian government. This is a matter of frame and focus, because the goal and responsibility of a Christian government is to enforce the law and protect the weak, and promote the true, the beauty, and the true, the beautiful, and the good. That is the focus of it. It's not to perfect society. It's not to have some sort of we're just going to conceive the perfect system, and if we can impose the perfect system, then we can wind it up and let it run itself and everything will be all hunky-dory. No. It's a posture that says we are going to protect our people. We're going to punish those who try to hurt them, protect our people from those who try to hurt them, and we're going to promote their well-being. We're going to create a structure of protection and defense and security, and we're going to eliminate barriers in the way of the things that are true and beautiful and good. Obviously, these are all vague enough that you can fit just about anything to it, and that's a feature and a bug. Call back to the vagueness post that Andrew made yesterday about the abortion issue. What you will never get away from, you will never have the perfect mission statement or the perfect institution or the perfect process. You'll never get that. All you can get is true, honest people of high character in positions of leadership who are entrusted with the responsibility to exercise wisdom and prudence and proper judgment to make good decisions and take good actions for the people who are in their care. You're never going to get away from that. The specific policies that a person pursues are less important than the character of that person and their commitment to honesty and truth. All right, last couple of stories here. This first one, Innocent bystander on Twitter says, just had an insane phone call with a principal at a brokerage house in a major metro. Apparently, he just got pitched an AI solution that makes cold calls. A good associate makes 100+ cold calls a day. This does 35,000 in 10 minutes. 35,000 cold calls in 10 minutes. They did a test run, and it's almost indistinguishable from a human. Within 5 years, only 10% of inbound phone calls will be from something with a prefrontal cortex. 0% of customer service will be humans. And this is I love this response. When people counter with AI answering systems designed to never buy anything, it will start the next energy crisis. See, the flip side of the idea that you're never going to create the perfect system that will perfectly instantiate the good into perpetuity, you will also never create the perfect system that will perfectly instantiate evil into perpetuity. So every single one of these sorts of things, you look at the downside to it. Only 10% of inbound phone calls will be from something with a prefrontal cortex. So 90% of inbound phone calls are going to come from a machine. Well, the flip side of it is that you've now created a massive demand for machines to answer those calls. And now you're just going to get robots yelling at each other. So contained within the technology itself is the very thing that will be used to mitigate aspects of the effectiveness of the technology. And so the trajectory of constant innovation and change and development and adaptation and evolution, all of this will just continue. This is hard for the doomers, the people who want to black pill about everything. They want to find this story that they can grab onto and say, see, here's why everything's going to suck. And for everything that's going to suck, there's going to be a hilarious response to it that mitigates it. Like AI answering systems designed to never buy anything. Here's a clever little tip for some of you out there as we navigate this society full of systems and institutions designed to subvert us and undermine us. We can fight back in little ways. Like, for example, they don't want you to know this, but you can enroll at ASU Online for $20 and get a student discount to everything across America. We got a brand new Samsung fridge for $1,200. Now, first of all, the fact that this would have to be $1,200 is just crazy. But originally it was $2,000. So if you're in the business of or you're in the market for a fridge, well, go sign up at ea.asu.edu. You could take a class for $20, and you could get a student discount to save on these sorts of things. And I have no problem with people leveraging these sorts of systems like this. This chick says, the fact that you think $1,200 for a fridge is a steal explains everything. You're rich and entitled. Never been called rich before in my life. Thanks. Greatest life hack I've ever read on the internet. He says, got the course credit, was told socioeconomic status is a larger driver than diet and the pathogenesis of diabetes, which is great. All right. And, yes, bleed the beast. That's right. Plunder Global Corp. Last thing for the day. Got a little, I don't know what you would call this, like personal development tips. Little wholesome stuff. This is Kevin Kelly, the close friend Tim Ferriss goes to for advice. He taught him a philosophy for life that made Tim stop giving a fuck. Here's the philosophy. 1, don't take it personally when someone turns you down. Assume they're like you, busy, occupied, and distracted. Try again later. To get what you want in life, ask a few times. This is where you can't be too overcome by the atrazine. This is the most important clip from here. Over the long term, the future is decided by optimists. Those who find optimism in tough times tend to go on and do something incredible that positively affects us all. Don't let this negative world beat the life out of you. Optimism is a differentiator.
Things that we need, and that it's the.
So this is him in an interview on Modern Wisdom with Chris Williamson, powerful mutual of mine.
Optimists actually are creating all the cool things that we need, and that is making our lives better. All the optimist is someone who envisions a world or something that they want to have and can believes that it's possible, and that belief and that envisioning help make it come about, because the really good things that we want are so complicated, they're not going to happen accidentally, inadvertently. You actually have to imagine them and have to believe that they're going to happen. And that requires optimism. And that's why basically it's the optimists who are shaping our future.
How much do you think that people can nudge that disposition?
One of the easiest ways is to change your time horizon. If you look out beyond just next year or the year after, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it becomes much easier to be optimistic because that slow growth, that slow compounding of progress can overwhelm even fairly serious setbacks and downturns and disasters even. And so, which are hard to kind of accept or even to confront with the short term. But if you take a longer term view, a long horizon, then you have the ability to kind of see that they can be overcome. And that goes back then that the setbacks are just temporary. Even if you are only increasing or improving or creating a few percent more than you destroy, if you compound that over time, it becomes a very, very large, consistent force. I am optimistic, and I think others should be too, not because of disregarding or dismissing our problems. I'm optimistic not because the problems I think are smaller than we're aware of, but because our capacity to solve the problems is increasing even faster. So we're not being Pollyanna and dismissing the problems when you're optimistic. You're just saying, no, we're trusting the future and the future generations, and our own skill for solving problems continues to increase.
I like that point there at the end, that it's not about being Pollyanna. It's just recognizing that, yeah, the problems get bigger and our capacity to solve them also gets bigger. Or we get to control the extent to which our capacity to solve them gets bigger. The purpose of a habit is to remove that action from self-negotiation. You create a habit to automate the process. If you perform a habit enough times, then you don't have to decide. Deciding causes decision fatigue, which sucks away your precious daily energy. This is the reasoning behind the when you go down the aisle or at the checkout line. As soon as you pull into that, you're just absolutely battered with a bunch of little things testing your decision fatigue because you just spent however long walking around the store making tons of decisions. And after you make enough decisions, your brain just checks out on making decisions. And it's like, whatever that thing, do that thing. So developing good habits means that the productive behaviors that you engage in don't have to fall prey to decision fatigue because they're just automatic. Perhaps the most counterintuitive truth of the universe is that the more you give to others, the more you'll get. If your life sucks or you feel down, you're not giving enough. You're selfish. Do this. Go to your local homeless shelter and volunteer for 2 hours. Life changed. Black pillars, hardest hit. If you're black pilling, I know what you're not doing with your time.
The way the universe kind of works is that it's generous. The more you give away, the more you get, which makes no logical sense whatsoever. But it's so reliable that you can live your life based on that. Of being able to give.
It actually does make logical sense if you recognize that logic is not just some sort of emergent force in the universe, but it's actually an expression of the mind of God.
Away, knowing that you'll get it is the foundation of all artistic creation and the best habit to have, because you need to produce a lot. You need to give away a lot and keep making things in order to make something great. And if you are confident that there's more where that's come from, that you can keep giving that away, and that's how you arrive at your understanding of yourself. If we can create 1% more than we destroy every year, then we can have progress. The way the universe kind of works.
You don't want to be famous. Kevin suggests reading the biography of any famous person. You can't hit the reset button on fame once you have it. The attention you want is from the people you love, not from strangers in the car park eating a Big Mac while taking pics of you. Most amazing or great things are done by people doing them for the first time. This is a banger. Resumes are for factory workers of the industrial age. Hire a person for their natural ability and train them for the skills they need. If your mindset is right, the rest is teachable. Most amazing or great things are done by people doing them for the first time. That's been sitting there in my noggin ever since I read this a couple days ago.
Clear right now that the major engine of wealth, and I would also suggest personal happiness, is being able to think different. That's the engine. And when we're all connected 24 hours a day around the world with our little devices, the true value is being able to think a little differently. That's the source of innovation. That's how you make great things. That's how you make great art. Travel and other experiences. Reading different books than other people read. I mean, there's lots of ways to do that, but you want to really cultivate that ability to think differently in a world where everybody's connected together all the time.
Shout out to Steve Jobs. I find this sort of phenomenon fascinating, that the centralizing effect of connecting everybody through their devices. That has like the centralizing effect. But what it also does is it really raises the value of people who are different, of the decentralizing aspect. There seems to be a consistent pattern of reality that within every centralization is a decentralization, and within every decentralization is a centralization. The more you make things the same, the more differences are magnified. And the more that the differences are magnified, the more the similarities are magnified as well. It's just something about the fundamental nature of reality. Almost anything money can do, friends can do better. In so many ways, a friend with a boat is better than owning a boat. Or maybe you might say a friend with a pickup is better than owning a pickup. You'll remember the friends you got to do life with on your dying days, not the material junk you collected. Being enthusiastic is worth 25 IQ points. People who show enthusiasm tend to have a level of energy that gets them somewhere special eventually. Look for enthusiasm, because anybody can be smart thanks to the Google search engine. More support for no fucking black pilling. Pros are just amateurs who know how to gracefully recover from their mistakes. There's a lesson for repentance in here. Find the tools you need to recover from the rejection of mistakes you'll make. Mine are reading, warm showers, and cake. Learn to recover and you'll have the fuel to go out into the arena and fight.
Oh, there is a paralysis I've seen in young people. It's like, I don't know what I'm passionate about. I don't know. And so I can't really start. I can't give my 100% until I know what that is. And I become convinced that the proper way to start is to master something. And in that mastery, that becomes a platform that you begin to kind of move towards discovering what it is.
Passion is a product of action.
Exactly.
It's not the other way around.
Exactly.
And so waiting around until you're struck with what you're passionate about as a precursor to action is the way most people think about it. And that just leads to paralysis and like a protracted period of confusion.
Exactly.
Reminds me of Peter Thiel's little one-liner that I think he said that thought is, or thinking is, often a substitute for doing. You're spending too much time rationalizing. You're in the rational part of your brain. Sometimes you just need to get out into the lizard brain part. You need to cultivate that passion. But the way you do it is by doing things, by taking action, by acting. Tyler says this is 100% true for writing. Yes, just start writing something. Start writing anything. The more that you write, the more the words will come to you. So what did he say? He said that passion is a product of action, not the other way around.
So you almost...
It's such a deep observation, so far-reaching. Thinking about this in the context of a marriage. Like a passionless marriage is lacking the action. Both parties are responsible for doing the action. Put the action in and the passion will return. But you can't just wait for the passion to come before you do the action, because it'll never happen. The passion is a follow-on from the action.
And it doesn't matter where you start, because that's not where you're going to be ending. And that's true. Again, if you look, any remarkable person that you admire, they didn't start there. They arrived at there. And the more kind of distinctive, unique, special, and only they are, the more likely they started way away from where they actually discovered what they were good at. And so don't be concerned about where you're starting, as long as you're moving forward in that way of really deliberately trying to get better, you'll arrive in the right direction. There is...
Might say like trajectory is more important than position or current state, although your current state could include your trajectory. But you know what I mean here. There's the dynamic view versus the static view. I think this is a part of the blank slate liberalism, naive boomer idealism thing, where at the end of history, there's no more progression forward. There's no more trajectory. There's all this talk about progress and this dedication to progress. Yet anything that indicates any sort of movement away from staticness we recoil from it. This is why we have no innovation. Innovation is tapered off to only in limited domains. It's starting to break through again. But we have this obsession with staticness. We evaluate people on where they are today, not where they came from and where they're going, but where they're at right now. which doesn't capture who they actually are. This is a broken view of the world. It's a maladaptive trait to view the world this way. We have to have limber minds, limber perspectives, perspectives that can track these sorts of trajectories and map them, see where someone is going. You see this in, for example, someone like RFK. The decisions that he's making, the things that he's doing indicate a trajectory. And you can map where he came from and where he's and project where he's going based on his trajectory. But if you just look at him, you take a snapshot and just look at him in this like a static way, you're not going to get the full picture of who he is and what he's doing and what's happening to him. Fortunately for us, another one of these paradoxes or these natural inversions is that the more that this happens, the more profound it is when people begin to rediscover this idea of a trajectory. As you begin moving, over the last 5 to 10 years, a lot of people have found themselves moving. They go from one ideology to another, to another, to another. And they see themselves, they start recognizing, becoming self-aware of this process of constantly updating your operating system, which then enables you to see it better in other people, at least ostensibly. Hey, that person is actually updating their operating system as well. And choosing to say, well, no, it just looks like he is, but actually he's the exact same person. He's changing on the surface, but he's not changing inside. How do you know? What would possibly entitle you to think that you could make that assessment of someone? It's ironically, it's this dedication to this blank slate, liberal, essentialist worldview. That's what drives the cynicism and pessimism, doomerism, blackpilling. Blackpilling is fundamentally liberal. Eat beans and rice for a year. The point of living poor, quote, anytime you have to risk something in the future, you won't be afraid of the worst case scenario. Living poor is preparing for failure in the future. This, that hits home. When crisis and disaster strike, don't waste them. I want lots of problems. Problems are how I get paid. Without problems, there would be nothing to do or to create. Suffering is a gift from God, one might say. Suffering, if you're suffering, that means you're experiencing the love of God.
So much easier for us to imagine, going forward, the problems and all the ways in which it doesn't work. That's entropy. It's harder to imagine the one or two ways things do work. The way things work are much more improbable than the way things break. That's the rule of entropy. That's the second law of thermodynamics. It's never been broken. The ways in which things cannot work and degrade are far, far vaster than the few ways that it can work. Because things that work are more improbable. And part of what we want to be is we want to be improbable beings. Another way we could say, like, don't be the best, be the only, is be the most improbable person possible. So much easier than the few ways that it can work. Far, far vaster than the few ways that it can work.
So the way that something won't work, the ways that it won't work are far vaster than the few ways that it can work, which is why the blackpilling perspective is so lazy. It's so easy. It's so easy to blackpill because all you have to do is choose from the vast assortment, the necessarily vast assortment of the ways things won't work. This is always the case, universally in every domain, no matter what. There will always be many, many more ways that things won't work. It's the sign of a lazy, underdeveloped, atrazine infected mind to focus on all of those things that won't work, rather than the significant few ways that it can and will work. That's what takes discipline. That's the evidence of the strong mind, is being able to pick out the ways that things can work and will work and focusing yourself on making those happen.
Work.
Finite games are played to win or lose. Infinite games are played to keep the game going. This is a really useful framework, the infinite games versus finite games. So finite games, They have a termination point. They're win or lose, zero sum. Infinite games are played to keep the game going. Seek out infinite games because they yield unlimited rewards. This is why people quit jobs to run an online business. Their goal isn't money, it's freedom. They do it to stay in the game.
Energy, there's a difference between being rich and being wealthy. The rich have a lot of money. The wealthy have time and control of their time. I am one of the wealthiest people on the planet because I have total control of my time, and every day is different. The amount of work, energy, research, writing that could go into your book is unlimited. You can always add more. So you can't manage the work, you can only manage your time. Say, like, basically, I'm not going to write the best book, I'm going to write the best book I can in a year. And the deadline is like, it's fantastic, because then after the deadline's done, I abandon the book. Books are abandoned as far as I can tell. There's a difference between being rich.
When we talk about capital, this is an important point here, that capital is not just referring to, if you're building your own human capital, you're developing or accumulating capital, it's not strictly monetary. It's also time and freedom and relationships, communities, land, territory, abilities, talents. These things are all included within capital. Bryce says, man, suffering is experiencing the love of God is an idea so many people do not understand because they're so selfish and prideful to think that nothing bad could ever happen to them. It reminds me of something that 2-Bit Podcast has quoted from Father Turbo many times, that being depressed is ultimately a manifestation of pride, because latent within that sense of depression is this poor me. Things suck, and I deserve better than having things that suck, so I'm going to be sad about the things that suck. It's pride. If you're depressed, that's a signal to you. Again, suffering is us experiencing our distance from God. That's why it's his love. We experience his love from a distance. We experience that void, that gap, and it hurts because we weren't created for this. Like C.S. Lewis said, if I'm experiencing for me a desire for another world, it's like a signal to me. Maybe I wasn't, I wasn't created for this one in its current state. I was created for something better, and I'm experiencing that. That pain is showing me how far I am from my destiny, from my telos, from the thing I was created for, the state I was created for. I was created for eternal communion with the Lord, and I'm out of order. I'm disordered. I'm experiencing a state of dis-ease because of that disorder. And it's a grace from God that we experience that. Imagine if we could be in a state of disorder with respect to the creator of the universe and we wouldn't know it. We'd have no way of sensing it. That's why suffering is a blessing. Your behavior, not your opinions, will change the world. Again, actions. Someone tell the wokes, merit-based systems prevent lazy behavior and opinions from nobodies from reigning supreme. The greatest teacher is called doing. Not professors, not degrees, not asking for permission. Join the permissionless economy. And again, here, contained within this digital mass surveillance state is also the reality that you don't have to go through the gatekeepers to learn or to build. You could just do directly, more easily than ever before. But it requires the character and the discipline to not allow yourself to be drawn into the thought control regime. Your growth as a mature being is measured by the number of uncomfortable conversations you are willing to have. Adult babies run from hard conversations. They go watch a Marvel movie. But telling people what they don't want to hear is how you create change. This reminds me of a quote from Alex Hormozy where he said something like, all the wealth and success that you want is hidden on the other side of the conversations that you don't want to have. You just got to have the conversations. I know every single one of you who's listening to this right now, there's some conversation that you've been holding off. Whether it's, by conversation, I mean going and talking to someone about something. Whether it's asking for something or telling someone about something, or maybe it's asking for a promotion or quitting your job and moving to a different industry, or something you've been concealing from your spouse, or You haven't talked to your family, to some family member, your parents. Or it could be a sales call that you need to make, some client that you need to engage with. And you're just putting it off. You're putting it off. You don't want to do it. You're just dreading it. And it's lurking behind you. It's weighing you down. And you feel, oh man, I just want success. I want wealth. I want prosperity. I don't want to feel this sense of dread hanging over me all the time. That sense of dread is a sign from God. Someone might say a sign from the universe. I say a sign from God. That there's a conversation that you need to have, and you know it deep inside, and you're pushing it aside because you don't want to have it. Just go have the conversation. You won't believe how much better you feel afterwards. Very few regrets in life are about what you did. Almost all are about what you didn't do. Take a risk or you'll be the same boring, shitty cubicle job for the rest of your life. When you die, you take absolutely nothing with you except your reputation. Spread love, not hate. Lower your ego. Being humble equals happiness. Make others feel special or important and aim to inspire people with your work. All right. That's all I got for you today, guys. I appreciate you coming and hanging out. Go join the King Pill Discord, kingpill.com. Follow me on Twitter, @RealKingPilled. Like the stream. Do all that stuff. I'll be back tomorrow. Last day of the week. And on the way out, of course. I haven't seen Taylor Brown today. Hopefully he'll watch this later. But I have Hulk for you guys. Enough was enough.
They're my hero. And they tried to kill the next president of the United States. Enough was enough. And I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother. Let Trumpomania rule again. Let Trumpomania make America great again.